You're listening to the DGD Podcast,
sponsored by La Touraine.
Here's your hosts, Robert Reynolds and Juan Daniels.
Welcome to this episode of the DGD Podcast. As always, Robert Reynolds and Juan Daniels. Juan, there was a lot that happened over the weekend. A lot of official visits, last-minute visits taking place prior to National Signing Day coming up Wednesday, which is what we're going to be talking about. Also, I think it might be a fan favorite, home run hire for me. Bryan McClendon coming back between the hedges as a receivers coach. Big deal right there. Another thing we're going to talk about there. But first, as you know, guys, the show is brought to you by La Touraine. Use code DGD at checkout for 10% off your purchase site-wide. With that being said, we'll go ahead and jump straight into this. B-Mac coming back. I don't know if people genuinely understand just how big of a hire this is. Obviously, he gets the receivers coach and pass game coordinator title there. And with that being said, that means more to me. And like I said, we'll talk about this. You being a receiver, I think you can kind of see where this is going too. A lot more here. In my opinion, it's a chess move rather than a checkers move. And I want to go ahead and get your thoughts on the hire overall first off.
Well, first and foremost, it's awesome. He's a Georgia guy, right? His dad coached. His dad was actually there. My first couple of years being at Georgia, but he's a Georgia guy. He develops receivers, and then also he's an unbelievable recruiter. So for those that are coming in, and then also too, don't be surprised if February 2nd we actually get some flips. I actually saw on Twitter, we had a guy, one of the receivers from IMG, that he's a 2023, that was like, wow, B-Mac is actually going back to Georgia. This is huge. So that's just something that's, it's only a plus for Georgia.
Oh, no, without a doubt. And the guy you're talking to is 2023 five-star receiver Brandon Ennis out of South Florida.
Yep.
And look, that's a big thing, right? Georgia, in my opinion, and this may be something that you can reflect here as well. It seems like the receiver position, right? We've talked about this ad nauseum at this point with, look with the likes of A.D. Mitchell, Lad McConkey, obviously what we brought in with, George Pickens, things like that. But we're not doing it on a consistent enough level. And I'm telling you right now, B-Mac will bring the recruiting to that level for the receiver position that's going to get those guys in there. If you don't know what kind of recruiting prowess this guy has, just at Georgia alone, Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall, also had Chubb and Michelle. He was a primary recruiter for all of those guys. Even at South Carolina, J.C. Horn, Josh Vann recruited those guys, beat us straight up for those guys. So wherever he's went, he's had a track record for elite recruiting prowess. That's coming back to Georgia. That's only going to help get us, in my thought, a position of need. Recruiting the receiver position, right? I know I listed a lot of running backs, but do understand that he was a running backs coach and then spent a year at the receiver position. Look, I'm telling you now, I am over the moon happy for this guy. Like him coming back, at first it looked like actually a step down to come from Miami to Georgia, but then obviously now you see the pass game coordinator title there thrown on as well. With Todd Monken, obviously, questionable there. Regardless, I think our offense just got a lot better from not even just a recruiting standpoint, but also a development standpoint. The guy can coach. He can coach his ass off. So, like I said, overall, I'm telling you, I think it's a home run hire. Patrick also says that B-Mac was a strong pick in his opinion. I can't be more right with it. I agree with that so much. And look, if you're not familiar with him, I highly suggest you start to look into that immediately.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, again, what's the other thing is he's a very personable guy, great guy, but the addition of pass game coordinator, that's something additional that he can talk to about the receivers, because, that was one of my gripes for receivers is, are we ever going to be able to get that 5-star or, continuously get those 5-star guys in there with all the rotation and all the different things that they do. But now that he's going to be one of the pass game coordinators, he can actually talk to those receivers about that. So not only are you going to be, coming in here blocking, being a part of it, but I'm the pass game coordinator, which, we're not going to be just pound the ball like we did before. We're starting to open up the offense.
Absolutely. I think Kirby made this move as a statement hire. And what I mean by that is, you saw, I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was on social media where, was it Luther Burden and Evan Stewart were talking about Georgia. They were asked about Georgia's passing game. And their comments to me just showed that like the perception wasn't what elite receivers look for. And with this hire, understanding what kind of recruiting background he brings, understanding production as well. J.C. Horn, Josh Van, but J.C. was a first-round draft pick, right? You look at obviously the running backs that he recruited here at Georgia, all drafted, doing very well, did very well in the NFL. That speaks volumes. And Kirby, to take him away from Miami, from a co-OC down to a receivers coach, initially that was a statement hire. That just, to me, shows me that, BMAC, one, it's home, and two, he just wanted to, come and be a piece that, Georgia needs to literally continue that sustained success that we're expecting now, right, since we just come off that national title. And look, I fully think that that's going to be the case. Looking at AD, looking at, all the guys in the receiving room, and just think, you give me BMAC with just the receivers alone, I'm not even talking about Brock Bowers right now. I'm not talking about our, Kenny McIntosh. I'm not talking about Milton out of the backfield yet. He's going to be in charge of all those guys. Understanding what he brings with the running back background as well, he's going to help get the most out of Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh. And this is what's going to happen. The writing's on the wall for me. It really is.
Well, and you add in Mike Bobo coming back as an offensive analyst. You could see that Kirby his plans are building just an absolute empire. And the only way to do that is just get the finest coaches around you. Where again, you look at the Nick Sabans of the world, who's had the Lane Kiffins and the Sarkisians and all these guys that are head coaches right now. But he had strong personality, strong-minded guys that had one goal, and that was to win championships. And that is what Kirby is doing now, is surrounding himself by elite, high-profile coaches to continue that tradition. Right now, Georgia's hot. Georgia's absolutely hot. So why not continue to, just to bring the heat, and then of course hire excellent coaches to go along with that.
Yeah, and you brought up Mike Bobo as well. Like, he gets a bad rap in my opinion for what happened at Auburn, right? But let's be honest, Auburn is a shit show, and him being the offensive coordinator there, look what we saw with Mike Bobo. And you might be more tuned to this as well. The offense wasn't the problem when he was there. The defense couldn't stop things. If you go back to some of his, some of the games that he coached that are more notable, look at the scores of what Georgia was putting up, and then look at how many points the opposition was putting up. Yeah. The defense was, in my opinion, the problem. Scoring points was not the problem. You bring him back as an analyst, right? And like you said, you look at what Bama, their model, right, for bringing in these guys as analysts, and that right there builds that attrition. It basically sets that foundation for attrition. You know it's coming. You're preparing yourself a year in advance. Get these guys as analysts, transition them into, let them step in as coordinators, things like that. We saw it with Muschamp. It's happening now. I'm telling you, Kirby, you are right. Kirby is setting up an empire, and I think he's doing it similar to Bama because let's be honest, as much as we all hate Bama, it's really the kind of almost perfect model, right? So you have to give credit when credit's due there. Doing it Kirby's way. Let's see what happens, right? Just coming off the national title. Let's see how Georgia, responds. And so far, with bringing in Bobo as the analyst, bringing in BMAC, in my opinion, I am all for those hires. Really am. Just have
to. Well, look at this too. The other big thing is you're bringing guys home, and these guys are the Muschamps, Bobos, BMACs. these guys that, really just gave blood, sweat, and tears for their university. And again, you're bringing in guys that love Georgia football. And, you've got, Bobo's been at Auburn. Heck, Muschamp's been at Auburn. They've been at Florida, Alabama. They've been all over the place. But to have the opportunity to come back home, I just think that was the destination, and their dream job was to be where they are right now. It's awesome. I mean, it really is, to have Georgia guys coaching Georgia football. And we talked about it, I think, the last podcast, that only 4 coaches in the history of college football have actually come home to win a national championship at their alma mater. And that's pretty cool.
I'm 100% with that. And I do recall that. One of the things I do want to bring up, though, with BMAC, though, I think he sticks around for a year or two, unless maybe he's the offensive coordinator in waiting, right? My thing is he's on the fast track to being a head coach, in my opinion. Just what I'm seeing from him, I think he's destined to be a head coach. The thing about that is you bring him in as your receivers coach and your pass game coordinator with the intention of letting him perform well in that role, and then let's be honest, I think Monken leaves if not this year, maybe next or whatever, depending on. So then you sit there and then you have that what do we do with it? Do we promote Buster? Do we promote BMAC? Obviously, I want to see what BMAC can do. And we know what he's done with the running backs because he's had that stint at Georgia. Maybe that's something that maybe Kirby's playing 4D chess, right? He brings him in as that receivers coach and then know the next year that Monken leaves, boom, there you go. Offensive coordinator, sole offensive coordinator, hire another receivers coach. That's to be determined, whatever the case may be. I just think that Kirby's very calculated with this. So I expect another layer that we're not seeing right now. But for now, him being the receivers coach, like I said, I'm happy as hell for it. And I know you're excited for it. And Georgia fans, you should be excited for it as well. Anybody that shouldn't be probably is going to be playing us next year. So
right,
where
yeah.
we are with that.
Well, and that's just it. I think he may be the offensive coordinator in wait, because right now Monken is probably the hottest coach, and people don't realize it, because what he was able to do with a backup quarterback and a lot of injured players. I mean, he did not have the full arsenal. So imagine having a JT, imagine having Darnell earlier. Then you add in, Bowers. And then if you have George Pickens, and you have AD, and then you have, Arian. I mean, if he had his entire arsenal of weapons, imagine what Georgia would have looked like. And so for him to do what he did with what he had was pretty special. And so it just goes to show you that he is a pretty good coach and probably one of the hottest ones out there.
Oh, rightfully so. I mean, like you said, we saw a lot of the tight end being used, right? And now this makes me start to think what happens with BMAC being pass game coordinator, right? You get, does that mean Darnell gets more touches? Does that mean, you start to see more usage out of the receivers, in different route trees, things like that? Because, what we saw with Stetson this year, like, I'm all for it, right? We opened it enough and it won us a title. You bring BMAC in here, what does that mean? There's so many questions and so much, anticipation and what could happen, right?
Yeah. Well, it also says a lot for the backs too. He's a running back guy, but just kind of what we talked about with with Milton and all those other guys. They now know, hey, we are probably going to be just as involved in the passing game as everybody else, and so that has to bring some excitement for the running backs, and then even from a recruiting standpoint, that has to bring a lot of excitement.
Yeah. Now my question is, before we transition to a different topic here, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think we're going to see this change? Do you think this is a sign of Kirby kind of relinquishing a little bit more of that hold on the offense? Do you think that's him opening up and letting the guys do their thing? What are your thoughts there?
He's going to have to. Especially if he's following the Nick Saban game plan. If you look at it, they won their first national championship, just kind of doing what, Georgia's, has done recently, right? Just kind of run the football, do safe passes, play great defense. And now you look at Saban, once Lane Kiffin came in there, he completely just blew all that out of the water. No one would have ever thought that they would have had an opportunity to see air Crimson Tide, right? So now that, you've got your B-Max, you got your Mike Bobos that are coming in there. These guys do not want to come in there and want to play safe. Let's just ground and pound 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, they want to open it up, and they want to also get the guys in to Georgia that's going to be able to, be game breakers. And so Kirby now is, once he's got, and I think that, you know what, you're kind of tight-fisted until you get that first national championship. Now that you've got that first national championship out of the way, now let's just open it up. And then who's to say, Kirby's not going to be the next Nick Saban, but in order to do that, you got to keep up with the times and actually, get those players, get those coaches around you that's going to be able to take you to that next level.
Oh, without a doubt. And with that being said, you're talking about players. Yeah, let's talk about this 2022 class, right? February 2nd is National Signing Day, the traditional National Signing Day. Let me be clear. Look, there's still some targets here for Georgia that could lead up to in my opinion, a very good finish to this 2022 class. If you're not familiar with this, looking at some names here, do want to kind of bring them out. You're looking at the biggest one, in my opinion, is Kristen Miller, right? Just coming off of official to Miami. In my opinion, I think it's down to Ohio State and Georgia. We'll talk about a little bit of prediction here in just a minute, but yeah, Kristen Miller. You still got three guys: Dylan Bell, Dylan Bell, Jordan James, and who else was it? They're expected to sign Wednesday as well.
Mm-hmm.
You also got a couple new names here that may have just came on late, and that's EJ Lightsey, recent or Florida commit at one point, and then Andrew Paul, running back from Texas. My thoughts here, Andrew Paul, watching his highlights, the kid that's some grown man stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I don't know if you're one to keep up with it. There's a lot of speculation that Jordan James, basically flips from Georgia to Oregon, actually going up to Eugene with Coach Lanning. But if Paul does commit, I think you're getting somewhat of kind of similar to what Branson, put on tape. Maybe just a little bit different, but I still think it's a very good running back. And like I said, I say this all the time: stars don't 100% mean everything, right? It means something, but it doesn't mean everything. Lightsey, Paul, both 3 stars, right? The people can, lose. You have these. I might call them the casuals, right? They see you lose a 4-star, you gain a 3-star. Oh, what's going on with Georgia? What's going on with Georgia?
Right.
There's levels to it, and I understand that Jordan James is a great player as well. He's a great running back, but Kirby sees some things, and look, Paul has really surged as of late too. And is really coming out, and one of these kind of hot commodities later in this class. I think he's a dog. I just think he's a dog. He just come off an official to Georgia. Look, Juan, you know what I'm talking about. This Georgia, this official visit, they go all out, and I think that's enough to keep him here. Also think EJ Lightsey will commit here. I know a lot of people look at 24/7 or whatever and expect him to be here. I do too.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this closeout for 2022?
Listen, you're coming off of a national championship, and then, again, Georgia's just, again, rolling out the red carpet. You look at the facilities, you look at everything that's involved. If one of those recruits, and I saw, most of those, a lot of those recruits were there at that parade on Saturday, but to walk into Sanford Stadium and see, over 80-something thousand people, and it wasn't even a football game, to hear them, scream and everything that was Georgia, right? You hear the band, you hear everything that's Georgia, and to not want to be a part of that, it's just kind of, and also too, Georgia's building a dynasty. Like I'll tell people, I think out of the next 5 years, the least amount of national championships Georgia will probably win will be 2. It's that special. So it's one of those, hey, either get on the train or get ran over. And, I think looking at that, to close out, I think February 2nd is going to be a great day where you're going to see Kirby doing a lot of his Twitter posts that just say, "Go Dogs." Go
Inject that
Dogs.
into my veins, my man. Inject it into my veins. Yep. Look, it's always fun to get those Go Dogs tweets, right? It's just the way it is. And like I said, 2022 for us, top 3 class. I think, if we finish off with Lightsey, finish off with Paul, make sure that we get the guys that are signed or committed, make sure they sign on the line. And if you bring in Kristen Miller, look, that solidifies a top 3 class, another top 3 class. Let me be clear with that. You see, we've said this before here, right? Top 10 classes nationally, top 15 classes nationally are nice, but when it comes to the SEC, that's average. And for Georgia to keep being where we need to be, we're going to have to keep this level. And look, now Georgia's got an army of recruiters. We saw what Billy Napier's doing right in Florida, hiring all these guys, game changer coordinator, all that bullshit, right? Like, you can call it what you want to, but Kirby brings in those guys. You don't need 2,000 guys to sit there and do what Kirby's about to do, right?
Right.
So you sit there, you bring in the big guns that that are elite recruiters, and the writing is on the wall from there. So, look, come Wednesday, we'll sit here and we'll sit back on this 2022 class, as we kind of finish it up, and look at the pieces, right? What did Georgia get? What we need? What does Georgia need from here, right? Look, Georgia's going to hit the portal. They're going to hit the portal. It's just a matter of when. More likely after spring camp, they're going to hit it. And I expect Kirby no less. He's going to hit those home run guys. He's not going to go in for just some random player just to fill up the position of need. Doesn't need to. He's going to go for the impact player. You saw it last year, right? Arik Gilbert, Tyke Smith, Darian Kendrick. All 3 of those guys, elite players at their positions, big-time names coming out of high school, whatever you want to call it. Kirby goes for impact players, and I see that being the same. And if it really come G-Day, right? I think G-Day, if we sit there and do what I'm thinking we're going to do, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this as it comes up. Look, I think you're going to see a lot of airing it out, right? A lot of airing it out. Get these kids, get this notion of Georgia's not a passing school, right? They don't use the receivers that much. They use the tight ends a lot. We did. But I guarantee you'll see more production out of the receiving core this year. I think you have to. This is just a prediction, though.
Yeah. But also too, it's almost like you're making do with what you have at the time. And again, Monken did not have all of his arsenal. So imagine what that would have looked like if he had that. So you get a healthy Georgia team offensively with all the receivers and the tight ends and running backs that we have. Wow, it's going to be something special.
Absolutely. Look, we're going to wrap this thing up today. No Q&A today, guys, for those watching. Look, we're obviously next episode we're going to be looking at probably the 2023 cycle. Look, this 2023 class, especially in Georgia, this 2023 is absolutely loaded in the state of Georgia. And look, I can't wait to sit here and start looking at this because there's some names that I know. There's some big targets and positions of need that we're going to have to hit again. We're going to start taking a look into there. Might, look at the offseason. I do want to say one thing, though. What in the hell is going on in Auburn? Did you hear about the offensive coordinator?
Defensive coordinator?
Yeah. Well, Rivers, I think it was from that was hired from the Seahawks, maybe last a month. So if this is news to anybody, they're off. I think it's one of their coordinators, OC or DC, I forgot, gets hired from the Seahawks and now is already stepping down. It ain't even been a month. So, the Harsin era is off to a great start, by the way.
Yeah.
To hell with those folks down there in Auburn, by the way.
Right.
Look, the more that happens, the better off I'm going to sleep at night. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But on that note, guys, look, obviously stay tuned for Wednesday. You've got, like I said, National Signing Day coming to a close for the 2022 cycle. A lot of names that Georgia could be in the mix for. Obviously, Chris Miller being the biggest. Even Shamar Stewart, there's a good shot there. We'll see what happens there. Also, give a shout out to those dogs playing for the Rams. Man, oh man, that was a game. I don't know if you watched NFL over the weekend, but Stafford.
Yeah, that was yeah. Sony Michel didn't do very much.
I hope Stafford wins it. I hope so.
Did an outstanding He did great.
He did, man. Look, Leonard Floyd, Sony Michel, Stafford. Obviously, look, I hope they win it just for that. Stafford is overdue for one. So obviously, guys, Super Bowl. We'll talk more about this, but look, go cheer on Stafford, go cheer on Michelle, right? All the dogs in the NFL. So, thanks, Patrick, for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that. On that note, though, we're going to call this show a wrap for today, guys. Like I said, keep an eye out for Wednesday. Georgia's in the mix for a lot of big-time targets left. Let's close this out on a good note. And then, obviously, as we close that chapter, we move on to the 2023. Remember, it ain't down mullet. It's recruiting season, all right?
Yeah.
It's recruiting season. It never stops.
Right.
So, on that note, though, guys, have a great day and go Dogs.
Yes, sir. Go Dogs.
Thanks for listening to the DGD Podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and to the DGD Podcast YouTube channel, where you can watch live Mondays and Fridays at noon Eastern. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the DGD Podcast. And check out the website at www.dgdpodcast.com.